All right, hello, I'm back. I had a false start there because somebody came into the backyard. So I'm starting over again and we'll see if it's better or not. So today I've made notes for 5 diary entries: the 12th, 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. But we'll see that may be a little over ambitious. I actually only made it through 2 yesterday. And just to recap what happened yesterday, there was this blow up between Dmitri and the Lamings. So much so that Maria Nikolaevna Laming was in tears. She was crying. And let's see, then the Lamings actually left. I guess they needed a break from Dmitri, so they left and went to St. Petersburg on the 11th, and they are not mentioned again on the 12th through the 17th. So I'm actually surprised that they stayed away that long. But they did. So we have a new arrival. Aunt Ella has come from Moscow, and a new person to introduce, Aunt Minnie, and we'll talk about her later. So many aunts, it's really hard to keep track of them, but I personally only have 2. All right, so let's start with the diary entry of the 12th. Aunt is arriving tomorrow. I'm going with Aunt Alex to meet her. I'm not really happy about Aunt's arrival because she'll immediately start to constrain us, especially me, whom she doesn't love. I lost my new knife, the one Misha gave me. It's really unpleasant and I'm frightfully sorry about it. 10 o'clock. Okay, so in case anyone doesn't already know, Aunt Ella and Aunt Alex were sisters, and their relationship would become quite strained when Rasputin entered the picture, but that hasn't happened yet. So Dmitri was tagging along with Aunt Alex to go meet Aunt Ella at the train station. Apparently Maria wasn't, because he says maybe he was trying, since he had the sense that Aunt Ella doesn't love me. That maybe he had a sense that, or maybe he felt that he should make a little bit more of an effort and go and meet her at the train station. So why is he not happy about her arrival? Well, she'll immediately start to constrain us, he says. So Uncle Sergei was very strict with the children when they were living with him. And I think Maria mentions in her memoirs, The Education of a Princess, that after Sergei died, Aunt Ella decided that it was her obligation to raise the children the way Uncle would have liked them to be raised. And so probably she's quite strict with them too. All right. You may remember from the past also that Dmitri very much looked up to Misha, who was the Tsar's younger brother, Grand Duke Mikhail Alexandrovich, so he's upset that he lost this knife that Misha had given him. And it's on to the next diary entry of the 14th, which is just 2 sentences. I need to go to bed. Aunt is sending me. We played billiards this evening, 9:45. So already we can see that Aunt is a little more strict. He's not writing his diaries at 10 or 10:30. He's already being sent to bed at 9:45. And if I'm not mistaken from, again, Maria's writings, I believe that 10 o'clock and initially even 9 o'clock had been their bedtime in Moscow, even as teens. So we played billiards. I'm assuming that we did not mean Dmitri and Maria or Dmitri and Aunt Ella. I can't imagine Aunt Ella, though. It's rather amusing to think of her in her nun's habit playing billiards. But this was an activity that the Tsar and Dmitri liked to do together. So I assume that's who it was. And diary entry of the 15th, moving right along. We met Aunt Minnie, who was at church, and then had lunch. On Friday, we're going to Gatchina with the sovereign and empress, where we'll confess and take communion. It was so warm today that we went outside wearing only our indoor clothes, to the great grief of Miss June, and had a snowball fight. It was 2 degrees. I must go to bed. They're driving me, but I don't feel like it at all. 10 o'clock. I got to stay up a little later that evening. So Aunt Minnie, who is Aunt Minnie? Well, there were 2 possibilities. It could be could have been the Dowager Empress, the widow of Emperor Alexander III, or it could have been Dmitri's real aunt, the mother of his, the sister of his mother, who was Grand Duchess Maria Georgievna. And both of them, I believe, were called Minnie. And the fact that Dmitri is referring to Aunt Minnie makes me think that this is probably Maria Georgievna. But the fact that they're going to Gatchina soon makes me think that maybe it was the Dowager Empress, because her younger son, lived in Gatchina. But I guess they're not at Gatchina yet, so it probably was Maria Georgievna. All right, so a brief mention of that. And Nicholas and Alexandra are going to take the children, Dmitri and Maria, with them to Gatchina on Friday. I'm not sure what day the 15th was, where they will confess and take communion. And this time Dmitri is not making a fuss about going to confession. When he was in Moscow, of course, he was really dreading that possibility and said, well, I'm just not in the mood. So apparently he'd gotten in the mood, or else maybe he even felt a need to confess the mischief that he'd gotten up to lately that we know about, maybe even this fight with the Lamings. So I'm not sure what he means. 2 degrees is warm in his estimation. Yeah, okay, I guess, relatively speaking. He and his sister are going outside, presumably his sister, are going outside to have a snowball fight, and they're definitely not wearing coats. And that's as much as I'm going to guess about that, because I'm not sure what he means when he says, in Russian, he says they weren't wearing platya, which means dresses. So was he talking about pajamas or nightshirts? He certainly literally wasn't talking about dresses, but I have translated it as indoor clothes, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, platya or platyo can also be translated as clothing in general, although it's almost always dresses in the sense of the garments that women and girls wear, which clearly isn't what is meant here. So Miss June, maybe this is the solution to the mystery of who was taking care of Dmitri and Maria during the Lamings' absence. And it kind of sounds like Miss June had been left holding that bag, and she wasn't maybe all that effective as at being the boss, because the children have gone running outside dressed inappropriately to have a snowball fight, and despite Miss June's great grief, she clearly wasn't able to stop that. All right, we've got time for the 16th. Today I had only 2 lessons, and they both went well: history and the law of God. This year I don't have the same feeling of guilt that I had with Uncle at the Governor General's house. The service is so short here that it's strange. In the evening, when Canon Andrei Kritsky was reading, the service lasted exactly an hour, whereas in the cathedral it goes on for 2 hours and 35 minutes. Right now we're going to church with Aunt, who's leaving for Moscow the day after tomorrow. I won't have time to write tonight because I have to take a bath at 6:45. So he's writing early in the evening, probably right before dinner. And then they're going to a church service. So I wonder, when he talks about this Canon Kritsky reading the service or leading the service in the evening, I wonder if he's talking about something that happened the day before, because he says we're going to church right now. It's 6:45 and we're going to church right now. So either this service happened in the afternoon, not the evening, or he's mistaken and it happened the day before. And he often does this, so it's quite possible. He often talks about things in his diary that happened in the past. So the two lessons that he has, one of them, the law of God, I'm not sure what that would be. History is straightforward. I don't think they'd be teaching children canon law. So maybe just in a general sense, the Ten Commandments and that sort of thing. I don't know. And he makes this very interesting comment about not feeling the same guilt this year that he had the year before at Uncle's, at the Governor General's house. And again, I think he's getting things a little mixed up, because the year before, if we take that literally, Sergei was dead. He'd been killed by the terrorist bomb, and even before Sergei was killed, he and Ella and the children had left the Governor General's house. He had resigned as Governor General of Moscow, a post he'd held since about the year Dmitri was born, since around 1891, if I'm not mistaken. And so it can't be literally the year before. It could have been 1905, but it couldn't have been February 1905. But Pascha, of course, is a changeable date, and it could be that just in general, Dmitri was feeling less guilty, because Sergei Alexandrovich was such a heavy-handed kind of individual. And that would not be at all surprising if he made Dmitri and Maria feel that they were not living up to what they should be living up to. And they were feeling guilty all the time, and especially during Lent. And I mentioned before that they had mixed feelings about their uncle, and in fact, in her memoirs that she wrote, of course, as an adult, Maria says that on the very day that their uncle was killed, that Dmitri looked at her and said, "Do you think we can be happy now?" So, and he refers also in his diaries as an adult that they weren't happy in Moscow. And maybe because of Uncle Sergei, I don't know, but he's feeling better about life now that is no longer that he's no longer in that household. So it seems to me, I could be wrong, but it seems to me that we are now in Holy Week. I wish Dmitri, later on, he's going to start giving the days of the week with each diary entry. And I could have looked it up, but I didn't. So if they're going to church services in the evening on weekdays, then it strikes me that it's probably Holy Week, because you have a church service every evening during Holy Week. Friday that they're going to spend in Gatchina would be Good Friday. And this would be, so the longest service typically is Holy Thursday when there's 12 gospel readings. But I don't think they're in Gachina yet. Maybe they are. It could be either Holy Thursday or Holy Wednesday, if in fact it is Holy Week. And boy, I have to tell you, I have never in my life been to a Holy Week service that lasted only 1 hour. 2 hours and 35 minutes would be much more typical. So lucky him. Those services can be quite long, and no wonder that he thinks it's strange. And although he doesn't seem to be objecting, he even seems a little befuddled by that. And the cathedral, I assume, is where they would have gone in the past in Moscow. The cathedral there, what is it called? St. Basil's, the one at the Kremlin? That wouldn't necessarily, though, have been where they went. So, Aunt is leaving for Moscow the day after tomorrow. I mean, it still could be Holy Week. She could be going back to Moscow to spend Pascha with her, with the nuns of her order and with her wounded soldiers to whom she was so devoted. Okay, he has to write early because he's having a bath, and apparently a bath was quite a production. You couldn't jump in and take a quick bath and then get out and write your diaries. He doesn't bathe all that often, but that wasn't his choice anyway. He was told when to take a bath, and I guess it was typical of that time that one did not take a shower or a bath once every day, as most of the people I know, and I myself do. Seems to have been about once a week. I need to start counting. So, should I go? I think I'm going to, I could probably squeeze it in, but it's short, but I think I'm going to wait to do the 17th along with the very long diary entry of the 18th, because they're more or less connected. And this is where we get into confession, and Dmitri talking about confession. And no, this must have been Friday. No, it must have been Holy Wednesday that Dmitri was talking about on the 16th, because on the 18th, Wednesday or Thursday, sorry, I don't know why I'm dithering about this. It isn't even that important. But anyway, the next diary entry's there in Gachina, and he's going to confession, and he's talking about what that was like for him. And he's also staying in Gachina and interacting with the people there. So they're interesting, and he seems to be having a kind of anxiety attack, maybe not surprising. So we'll talk a little bit about that and whether the illnesses that he experienced were often psychosomatic or if they were not. And that, of course, is a very hard judgment to make. Now I just really am rambling, so I'll say goodbye until next time.